And Heart to Heart today has a special edition, 24th of January 2021. My dearest father-in-law, Brigadier Anthony Julian Stevens, is completing his 80th birthday. And I could not miss this opportunity to use my channel to express my affection and my the honor that I have in my heart to be his daughter-in-law. You are going to be coming with me for a little interview with his son, Ted, Giles Dominic Stevens, who is going to give me a little bit more of background and memories that only him as a son might be able to help me. But I have been in his life and he has been in my life for 20 years. So I met Anthony in 2000, just couple of months before I got married. How our lives started, our romance started. And I fell in love with him too. I'm passionate about my father-in-law. He's an amazing, amazing man. I admire him. I adore him. He's so gorgeous as a person and as a good looking too. We're going to see some historical photos of his, and he's really, really cool. And I remember that yeah, I'm not going to say that now, but we will have some more other interesting things coming up. And Granddad, Anthony, Dad, I call you Dad, happy birthday. I really, really wish we could be together right now and have that nice hugs, the Brazilian hugs. Have him dress up as a Brazilian for you today. Literally, I'm by the beach, I'm in the south of Brazil, I'm with friends right now, but I could not miss this moment. And dressed up La Brazilian, really colorful, really joyful, because it's a moment to celebrate indeed. Happy birthday. Welcome to Heart to Heart today. I am so excited to come to you with some special edition for this program today. We are recording it on the 24th of January 2021. And the reason of that is because today is a very special day for somebody who I admire a lot and I care so much about. And he's turning 80 years old today, and this person is my father-in-law, Brigadier Anthony Julian Stevens. And I have a guest speaker here today that will help me to bring some memories. I have been in his life only for the past 20 years. I met him just before he turned 60, so it has been an amazing 20 years of just getting to know somebody so loving, so caring, so kind, with such a beautiful background and hard working life, but who became a wonderful husband and father and now grandfather to my children. He's my father-in-law. I love you, Granddad. I love you, Dad. And this program is all about you today. We really want to dedicate this time in Silvie TV, Heart to Heart, to congratulate you on your 80th birthday. I am recording here from Brazil. Obviously, you can see we are a la praia because we are on holiday, sort of, in the summertime in the south of Brazil. And we really want to bring a little bit of our joy and life from Brazil to your heart today to say you are wonderful. And here I come with my guest. Here I am with Giles Dominic Stevens, known as Ted. That's his nickname. And he is the second son of Brigadier Anthony Julian Stevens. So thank you so much for accepting my invitation to be here in the Heart to Heart to speak about your father. How is that for you? Can you say hello and just how is to be the son of Brigadier Anthony Stevens?
Well, you have to admit that you don't get a choice, do you, about being somebody's son? But if I had a choice, I would choose to be. So it's been a joy and a privilege to have such a caring, loving, considerate, gentle father, really. Somebody who's always really shown his love through real care and generosity and always being there and being easy, affable company all the time. And so it's great to be able to have a moment just to sort of think about him and reflect and and remember stories as we celebrate his 80th birthday this year, and I think that's just wonderful, wonderful. I think, when you get to 80, it's a time, if you look at each decade of life, there are different seasons, and I think octogenarians are in that stage where they can think about their memories and relive that. I often say to our children that, doing things isn't just for the moment. You can feed on good memories for the rest of your life. So stack your life full of good memories. Yeah.
And that's all about today. This program today is bringing back memories, that like a memory lane. No, we are going to try to dig a little bit. In these past 20 years, every time I meet my father-in-law, I just want to excavate. And it was like the treasure inside of him, because he has so many amazing stories. And every time he's speaking, I just wish I had a camcorder or just a recording something in my hand, just to keep every single word he says. And that's what we're going to do. Great. Now I want to ask Giles Ted, tell us a little bit about whatever memory you have that somebody told you, either your father or grandfather, about his background. So, and I would love you to mention his father and tell us a little bit more, because he's a history maker. And I think it's, to speak about somebody, you need to remember they had a father who input in them something. And I think your father was very privileged to have, what was your grandfather in the army? Was he a
colonel?
Colonel John Stevens.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, let me just see everything by saying, it's sometimes difficult, but to differentiate between the myth and the man. And I think when you're growing up, you always tend to idolize your father and paint him in broad strokes, and you hear stories as well, and sometimes you don't fact check them, and so probably what I'm about to say is part fact, part fiction. But it was just always a joy to hear some of Dad's childhood stories, and sometimes they read like a sort of Tom Brown schoolboy novel. But going back a generation, Dad's 80 years old, or celebrating that, and so he was born in 1941, and second son like me, with a big brother Henry, younger sister Penelope or Pinny. And
in a very crucial year, isn't it? Because 1941, just
right
when everything is happening.
Right at the height of the Second World War.
Wow.
And because of that, actually, the children were sent down to East Africa, to Kenya they call it, to be raised there in the relative peace and protection of that area. And so interestingly, actually, Dad spent his first few years over there and learned to speak some Swahili, the local language, and had this kind of rather extraordinary upbringing away from England and away from his parents. And probably necessarily so, because his own father, Colonel John Stevens, and you could read about this in one of the military history books, suffered the most incredible, extraordinary tragedy in that he was commanding a regiment that was sailing on a ship in the Mediterranean that was torpedoed, and literally the ship went down in minutes, and the only people who survived were those who were on the bridge, in the captain's bridge, and on the top deck. And so virtually the whole regiment drowned in minutes. And so he had this incredible burden of not just losing all his companions, but actually having
look at me,
having to return to England to inform all the wives and children of his soldiers that they'd all been drowned at sea. And interestingly, we had in our garage for years, and it may still be there in my father's house, a little stool that would sort of open up, and it was my grandfather's, and we kept it. And I sort of asked Dad, why keep this strange little thing that's all rotting away in the garage? And he said, well, your grandfather, as he floated in the sea in the Mediterranean, having been torpedoed by a German U-boat, he said he survived because he was up on the bridge, and he used to carry this little stool around with him that was foldable, and apparently he found it floating along in the wreckage.
Whoa.
And so he kept it, and that was a sort of link back to his own past, and a link for us to appreciate, I suppose, the incredible price paid by, soldiers, to keep Europe free from tyranny in that age. I mean, it was extraordinary how we tend to forget rather than to remember the price others laid down for our freedoms to keep us away from tyrannical dictators and so forth. So Dad was brought up into wartime Europe with all its sufferings, and that's not easy. That's not easy.
Imagine.
Now, when they came back home, his brother and sister, they were all shipped off pretty quickly to boarding school, and I remember, and I think probably he does, obviously more stories, like I say, sort of Tom Brown boarding school stories. He went to St. John's Beaumont and then on to the senior school. And again, this is where the myth kind of comes out, because I don't really remember exactly, but he told stories around the table as we were children about how, the things they would get up to. I remember one that he had a friend that kept pretending to be different people. In those days, of course, people wrote letters rather than even made a call or send a text or email. And apparently he pretended to be a local vicar or who had organized a village fete and had ordered Smarties from Cadbury's or Roundtree, whoever produced Smarties. And he wrote this letter saying, "Dear Sir, I organized this fete and for all the children to have a packet of Smarties, and when they opened them up, they were all brown ones to their dismay." And so Dad said that apparently the Smarties company therefore sent him a whole crate of proper Smarties, multicolored ones. So that was a story. I don't know, as I said, whether it's true or not, but I remember hearing that one, as well as another colleague of his who apparently always was skipping school to go off to sort of visit places, and apparently he was passionate about Formula One and went off to Silverstone, skipped school, went off to Silverstone for the weekend, came back, and the headmaster called him into his study in the morning and said, "Boy, where were you over the weekend?" And he replied, "I was here, sir, studying away as usual." He said, "Well, you must have had a twin brother at Silverstone." "Really, sir? Why do you say that, sir?" "Well, because your picture is here on the front page of the Times."
Oh my
And he pulled out this
goodness me.
picture of the Times, and there he was standing next to the F1 champion of the day. And so all these kind of stories came out, and I'm sure you had many more,
Oh
but
my
I remember
goodness.
those.
Oh boy, we are here bringing memories of my father-in-law, Brigadier Anthony Stevens, and oh boy, I get so emotional with things like that, because when we are talking here, we are not just, from what you said, like, how do you say it in the beginning? It could be like fiction, but it's real life.
Yeah, right.
Real life. When somebody has this type of experience, of being in a boat in the middle of a war, us here, the new generation here that only hear about, we don't have a clue the feelings and the emotions that goes inside of somebody who had, like your grandfather had. But before we carry on your father, is there any more memory of your grandfather as well? We want to, because I remember he was a very intelligent man. He learned 7 languages, 8 languages, something like that.
7 languages,
7
yeah.
languages.
And probably a smattering of a few others, but all the Latin languages I think he spoke. So,
I remember
including Romanian.
I know.
Yeah.
I think your father used to say that one time he was listening something in the radio, and he was understanding it, but he couldn't even remember which language was that.
Right.
He couldn't understand it, but which language is that? He knew so many languages that he could even mix up what he was listening.
Yeah, and he invented a thing called the Stevens plotter, which is something in the family that we obviously pride ourselves in. And if you're a military technician, you'd kind of understand this. It was a device that helped gunners, the artillery, who would shoot from their guns, rounds to hit the enemy at a distance. And obviously you wanted to make sure that where they landed hitted the enemy, didn't go too far or too short. And so he invented this contraption that allowed, much more accuracy, which obviously helped on a lot of campaigns. And actually it became really personal to me, because when I went up to Oxford to study history, I did a special study on the Dardanelles campaign, the Gallipoli War in the First World War. And many things went wrong there. But one of the things, I read personal journals and diaries of soldiers who were on the front line. And one of the things that I read, because there are so many different ways that the Allies could have won that war, but everything seemed to go against them. But at one stage, literally, their own guns bombed their own, and this is a common thing. Of course. Their own people. I think they call it blue on blue. So accuracy in a battlefield is really, really important. Identifying first of all, and then being accurate with your shooting. So he invented this thing, and that obviously was quite a good thing at the time. And so he extraordinary man. I mean, with age, I've really begun to sort of appreciate him more and more and more. When you're a little boy, you kind of look at your grandfather, and they can be a little bit stuffy or from a different generation, and he would always dress in a three-piece suit, shirt and tie every day, no matter summer, spring or winter, and no matter where he was, even if he would stay at home. And I kind of really began to appreciate that systematic side of him. Sadly, he and his wife, my father's parents, divorced quite young, and being a very strong and devout Catholic, he never married again, because he really believed that marriage is for one person for life. And I respect him for that. And he was a disciplined man. Even in his faith, he would really, go to church and all these kind of things regularly. And he wouldn't like to be around sort of profane conversations and so forth. He would politely excuse himself and that kind of thing. And he kept himself extraordinarily fit. But coming back to this sort of British systematic character that he had, I always remember visiting him he had this terrific one-bedroom apartment just off Piccadilly in central London, one of the nicest places to live in England. And but it was sort of from a different world, because it was like you'd step in through the front door, you'd go back into sort of black and white times, another generation, because he kept everything from that era. But he would cook himself a proper meal every day, meat and vegetables and everything. He would lay up the table, knife, fork, spoon, glass, everything, salt and pepper. He would sit down, napkin, and he would go through, even though he would eat on his own most days. And so there was this systematic thing, which was very characteristic of that Victorian era. But I think it's really good, because it talks of real self-discipline, of upholding standards, of doing what's right, no matter who's watching, and things like that.
Definitely, quality of life. Yes, I'm so enjoying, and I hope you are too. It is for you to have a family history and value it. Obviously, there is no perfect family, there is no perfect story that it's no pain. Every family, every story has the moments of pain and loss and all sorts of things, divorces and all kind of things. But I think if we are able to bring the memories that are the ones that we should keep, then you can create an amazing story out of your own life. And right now, the priority is my father-in-law, and I love him to bits. He knows that. I'm passionate about him as his son. Can you tell now about, let's focus on your father. So your memories of your dad. Let's bring, before your memories of him as a dad, can you remember a little bit more of his how did he come to the army? What was his decision to go to the army? And then he meets your mom, when your mom comes along, and then brings up to your birth, something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, thinking about it, he was 28 when I was born, and my brother's 2 years older, so he would have been 26 then. So he had, obviously his whole schooling life and university life, and then early career, without us there. So, but I obviously only have memories of him in his 30s and beyond. And but Dad, having finished boarding school, which in England is from 7 to 18 years of age, he went up to Manchester University and studied science up there. And Dad's always had he's always been a very intelligent man, very quick to understand technical things, but he's an interesting guy because you can't put him in a box. He's got so many sort of different talents that makes him
music and poem and
this is it. Yeah, we'll talk about that. But he's
arts.
He's not the picture. He's not the classic picture of an army officer who you would see as just being this sort of stereotype. He's got far too many flavors and colors to his personality.
So proud of him.
I think to be like that. And so quite why he went into the army, I can't remember. But what I do know is that he went up to Sandhurst, which is our officer training camp and so forth. And certainly from hearing him talk about his time at Sandhurst and then as a young lieutenant and captain and taking on his early postings, he always talked about it with a lot of relish. And I think one thing that always came across to me was the fact that he had such great friends. And I think that's something that perhaps army life provides, and certainly he did anyhow. And he's because he's an affable, friendly person.
Amazing.
I think he attracts good friends. People like to be around him, and he is. I could talk about how he really is a good guy, a good host for a party. He makes everybody relaxed, and he gets singing and all that kind of stuff in a nice, creative way. Not just sort of drinking and slabbing about, but doing stuff that's really makes for a good atmosphere. And so he buddied up at Sandhurst with other friends who were, similar age and stage. Boy, I should rattle off all their names, really. But the point is this: that and those friends that he formed in those early years, he really has carried through his life.
I find it fascinating.
And interestingly, because we're in lockdown at the moment. Worldwide, and so we've just spoken to them about what they did over Christmas and New Year, and of course the UK's got fairly stringent rules, and so they had to celebrate. I think they had Christmas drinks in the cold of England on the 25th of December in the garden. They couldn't even go in the house, and Dad built a fire pit and then had friends come over, and they had to sort of toast each other at a 5-meter distance across the fire pit. But there, and he's in his 80th year now, let's remember, he was with his old buddies from Sandhurst, from those early army days. And that's something really precious. That when you've got friends who stick with you through thick and thin, and
such as your mom is stuck with him too for how many years now? 50?
Well, 50, what is it? 51? No, sorry, more than that, because we celebrated their golden a couple of years back, 3 years back.
1 year more than your older brother, Rob Stevens.
Right.
So 50 some years together. And how did your mom come along?
Let's jump to that. Well, again, there's this story which I don't know if it's worthy of recording, but of a party of young people, and somehow Dad, I think, either fell into or tripped over a dog basket.
Oh my goodness.
And Mother collapsed in there with him or rescued him out of it or something. Well, again, I'll let them fill in the details. But I like to say he's been in the doghouse ever since.
Wow.
I'm joking. Yeah. But that was, I think, the moment where they sort of, had that moment when they looked into each other's eyes and just sort of like, wow.
Something about a guitar as well, that your dad had a guitar to buy a ring or something like that.
Oh, yes. No, you tell that.
I can't remember. I just know that there is lots of interesting
details. He ought
details.
to record those details.
Yes. Boy.
Yeah.
And your mom, a pretty girl, coming along, and she really embraced the army life.
Oh, you should see the pictures of them both when they're young. They're stunning.
We are going to find them and show here.
Mum's a sort of classic 60s, slim, good-looking brunette. And Dad's a kind of chiseled. He's got this wonderful chiseled jawline.
Very good-looking couple.
He's a bit
my goodness.
I like to say a bit of a Harrison Ford when he's not shaved, anyhow. Perhaps a bit. Maybe I'm trying to think of somebody else now, a bit more clean-shaven normally. But they were lovely. Yeah, I think anyhow, lovely-looking couple, and they headed out, on this, Mum signed up to the army by marrying into him, so to speak, and so she headed off on to war with him. And I think my earliest memories, partly because of the cine camera, which was before these digital cameras, long time before,
And your mother was good at it, keeping the recording, right?
Yeah, yeah, almost as good as you. But
I beat here now.
But I remember those early cine films and watching them, and then us appearing in a row, Rob, my elder brother, myself, and then Lulu. Particularly in Hong Kong was where we all sort of came on the scene.
Let's bring just a little bit of I love those details because your mom has told me once, I remember that she had Rob, which is the oldest son, adorable boy, and she's just enjoying having one child when she suddenly realized that your father has been invited to move from the UK for the first time, so she would need to move overseas. And then at the same, when he is doing all this checkup of health checkup to travel overseas, and he finds out that he has like a small tumor here on his how do you call this?
Yeah, just below his
below
cheekbone.
His cheekbone here. And this obviously changed things a little bit. He started to do the treatment when your mother finds out she's pregnant
right
of you.
Right.
So it becomes imagine 3 major things: moving country, your husband finds out he's with a tumor and needs to spend months and months in London while she's alone at home packing because they needed to leave the house they were living to move somewhere else, and then she's pregnant, which the pregnancy itself just gives you your hormones a whole turmoil. And I really admire my mother-in-law by holding on tight and bringing up this wonderful boy. So yes, I know that on the 12th of September you were born in
Are you trying to say that I was born in the midst of all that stress and pressure? Okay.
So you come and thank God that your dad's treatment was a success, real success. And then you are born, and then 4 months later, then you leave the UK and go to Hong Kong.
Yeah, I think actually Dad had gone out prior to us, and Mum stayed back with a little blonde boy, Rob, and myself. And she gave birth to me in the army hospital, and pretty much as soon as I was old enough to travel as a babe in arms, which I think probably was only 2 or 3 months old, they put us on one of those old DC-10 aircraft, which you would sit backwards in, and we flew off to Hong Kong.
Oh my goodness, what an exciting life. We could do a movie out of this, don't you think? I can picture it all. So then you arrived there, your father's, at that time, which stage is he in his career, being in Hong Kong? What was his...
well, I think he was a lieutenant, if not I don't know if he'd reached captain by then, I can't remember. But I think it was a great tour. Again, they had terrific memories, and obviously, we see more of the stuff we did, that we did as a family in Hong Kong Bay, going around in boats.
And you had a maid that was a Chinese lady.
Chinese lady taught me how to eat with chopsticks before a knife and fork.
Amazing.
And Dad would go off into the Malay jungle, and patrol, in those days, the borderland there. Hong Kong is an island, but it also had a mainland part on the Chinese continent. And so that would be patrolled and protected, so that was.
And then from Hong Kong they go to, is it Russian?
No, that's later. We come back to England. The whole time Dad was sort of sent out, then back to England, then out again, and then But we went to Russia. He was posted to Moscow.
But before that, because I love details, because I think. Like my mother-in-law, she was able to move so many times. She told me how many times they have moved in their lives until they settled in Highworth. But and the thing is, the ability she has to keep things together, because I moved a lot in my life too. I'm not going to tell you how many times I beat my mother-in-law too, but every time I moved, I would just leave things behind and start all afresh wherever we go. Just go with the suitcase. But my mother-in-law, she still, when I met her, she gave me a dress that she used to wear when she was single, when she met Dad. So she was able to move all these houses, all these countries, and still keep all this treasure of the first, little things when he was a baby, little Teds, and all these kind of. She's I mean, she's a star. But then let's remember how many countries he lived, just back and forth.
Well, no, I don't know, but I think, coming back to your point, I remember Mum saying something like 25 houses in 25 years. It was kind of, you know, I, as you say, they did settle, and so that, that dropped off, I think. But it was something as crazy as that. Which ain't easy, easy.
So, but then you were there with them until you were 6, and then you and your brother is sent to UK while they were somewhere in the world?
Yeah, well, exactly that. I remember going off to boarding school when Dad had been posted out to Moscow, to Russia. And so I remember clearly in my first little class at boarding school, showing my new teacher, you know, some photos of Russia and living out there that she seemed to be fascinated by.
And by then your father in Russian, he had a specific job, like as a...
Yeah, he was assistant to the military attaché, so in the British Embassy in Moscow. So the British Embassy had different departments, and so each one of our main forces, the Air Force, the Army and Navy, would have a representative with his team. So he was one of the team of representing the British Army out there. So that's the official sort of description of his work anyhow, obviously.
What about the spies? Is there any time? Is it allowed to speak about it or not?
No, I'm sworn to not say anything.
Come on, let's find out a little bit more.
Again, these stories that you hear, and then you I don't know whether your own mind embellishes things, but no, I mean, what I do remember is that he used to work closely with his American counterpart, a guy called Colonel Williams, who was probably Major or Captain Williams at the time, and they exposed I think a Russian spy working in the UK through their contacts there, and then because of that, in those days, in the Cold War, it was a sort of tit for tat, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth system. So because they had uncovered a mole, what they called a mole, an informant, then the Russians accused them of being informants and spies as well. And I think Pravda, the local Russian newspaper, did this article how that my father had been caught spying and had been expelled from Russia. But actually what had happened was that he'd already left Russia anyhow, and so it wasn't, it was them sort of, you know, digging up stuff. But that was classic Cold War sort of activity. That said, obviously Dad did get around and keep his eyes open and take photographs and other things, and there may be some things that I don't know.
Hey, Brigadier Anthony
Read
Stevens.
your John le Carre books.
What is the book you can recommend?
No, the John le Carre is the classic British spy author who will reveal more things, and then you can... Well, this is my problem, because I used to read all those books, so I don't know now what's fact and what's fiction.
Anyway, I would like now, we tell a little bit now, you as a son, what memory do you have, like your dad now as a dad, not as a army and captain or brigadier, but you told me that you lived, you know, most of your years there in the boarding school, but you were constantly coming back home, and you have amazing memories of your dad. And you told me once that you remember him kissing goodnight, reading books. I think that's such a...
Yeah, he was always very good at that, very good at reading books and very good at tucking us in, and you know, A.A. Milne's Winnie the Pooh just came off the page to us as little boys. So that's our sort of earliest memories, because he was so good at telling the stories and saying the poems, because he's so good with words, my father, and great at sort of taking on the personalities in the books.
I think you even remember the night that he was so busy there and he couldn't kiss you goodnight, and you went to bed like feeling like you missed it a lot, wasn't it?
Well, I think that was maybe, you know, many nights, and obviously he travelled a certain amount. But yeah, I think you know, again, it might be more of a British thing, I don't know. But in England, we you know, you have a whole routine of going to bed and brushing your teeth and reading your book, and then your parents coming in to tuck you in and kiss you goodnight and say your prayers and all that kind of stuff. And so if the routine wasn't fulfilled, then you would feel like something was missing. And I think the sort of, how do you say, the cream on the icing on the cake was the goodnight kiss from from mum and dad.
Wow.
And so without that, you always felt like it wasn't quite such a blessed night.
And talking about saying your prayers, your dad is a very very strong and genuine with his faith, isn't it? As a Catholic, I have been with him sometime, and I can see what I admire a lot is it's his consistency. It can be raining or cold. He wake up on Sunday and he gets ready to go to church, and that's such a lovely way, to have the priorities right. And I think that's an example he gives to us about faith. No matter what, his faith is still there, remaining, in Christ. This is wonderful. Now let's jump a little bit more now to our story, and let's think now. When I meet you, I have great memories of meeting your father for the first time. Hi, Dad. And for me, the highlights, because imagine I just meet this young man, in 2 months later we are getting married. Madness, crazy. But he needs to introduce him. He has already told me he's going to marry me before he introduced me to his family. So he's already going there to introduce his wife to be. It's kind of really my heart, all the way from London to Highwood. But then I arrived there, and he gives me this warm hug. I love your dad's hug. Until today, it was this affirming, welcoming hug. And then as soon as you just introduce, and didn't take long for you to say, I'm getting married, blah, blah, blah. And he grabs this champagne bottle and
That's right.
Celebration. So imagine a way to meet your father-in-law with the champagne. So it was my first champagne being opened for me. Thank you, Dad. I really loved you, fell in love with you and Mom since first sight. And it has been a wonderful journey. And when we got married, you were so generous to us in our wedding. And then I had my driving license, Brazilian driving license, that was not valid in England anymore. He said, no, you need a British license. And it was his first Christmas present to me, was paying for my whole process of having my British driving license. And he just believed in me. And I remember first time I came to his house or Christmas, and he said, oh, can you drive me to, because I needed to be practicing now in England to do my test. He said, oh, can you drive me somewhere? He needed to go somewhere. And I'm like, my heart to my hand, driving his Mercedes. And I remember, oh my God, I'm so privileged to have like a father-in-law who puts his Mercedes in my hands. And I love cars, and I love speed, and I love all these kind of things. So anyway, that's memories that comes alive. And also to hear him singing, to see the poems he has done, to just go through his arts on the wall, his painting, and it's so many inspiration he has, isn't he? Like, and also the way he does life with your mom, the kind of the companionship they have now as they grew old together. Not old, they are still very young. Grew young together. That's a better way to say. And he's such a gentleman. And he loves dancing. I love seeing him and mom dancing on the floor. You go there on a wedding, there they are, the both of them dancing away. And that really was like a freedom for me to see a couple who just enjoy life, enjoy fun, because life to be fun needs to be fun. There is so much hardness out there, and he knows how to do that. Just have fun. Mom can get tense sometimes, and he just relax.
Right.
Tell me a little bit more of the memories together.
Well, you're touching on a couple of characteristics of his that I think are really, something to talk about. Because number one, his generosity. I mean, he's always just thought of, as us as children. Now you married into the family, he's always been there to help and provide as best as he can, and often at a sacrifice to himself. Indeed. And I certainly had that sensation growing up, that Mum and Dad both sort of held back often from what they could have spent on themselves in order to give us a good education or to buy us necessary things. I always remember him paying for some golf lessons for me. I don't know why it sticks out for me in my memory, because I just seem to remember they weren't cheap, and he bought a package of golf lessons and had me go off with a golf pro to learn, and that made a real difference in my game. But he never invested in himself to do golf lessons. He really should have. So for the rest of our golfing career, you know, I would play an okay round, quite a good round of golf, and because he just never done the lessons and learned the, you know, sort of techniques, he played for years.
He had fun and threw the ball in the river.
Well, this is it, and it was always fun. I mean, it was always either laughing or crying or worse.
Yeah. But he still is, isn't he? He cares. I see the way he treats each one of the children.
Yeah.
They're all grown up, they're all adults, and now with grandchildren. But when it comes to his caring heart to each one of you, you can see how it's just their boys or their girl, his boys.
Yeah.
And this is so touching, and it's such an inspiration and such an example for us to follow.
Yeah.
And as a grandfather as well, my goodness, I have, you know, he has now how many grandchildren? Nine. Nine grandchildren. 4 from us, 4 from Lulu, the younger one, and 1 from Rob from Australia. And also, like, imagine now, they are alone in the UK. Not alone, but like as family, close relatives. And then he has 3 children, who the oldest one goes to Australia and marry a Australian girl and lives in Sydney. Then Lulu, the youngest one, marries an American, Jewish American who lives in California. And then we have UK here, California there, Australia there, and then he marries a Brazilian from the wild, from the from the jungle. Here it is. Oh my goodness, what a privilege I have. And then we moved to Brazil. So for them to visit their grandchildren, they need to travel literally the world, in every corner of the world, if we can say there is a corner in the world.
Yeah, it's true. I think the other characteristic is, as you say, this incredible theatrical or dramatic or creative side of him. He's got an incredible command of words, of lyrics. And so whether he's writing a speech, a poem, or a song, they are always so witty and so fun and so uplifting and so funny.
We will try to get the children to sing one of his songs.
And you know, I think that's been one of the things that's really stood out, and wherever he's gone, a lot of people have sort of said to him, look, if you hadn't had a career in the army, you could have made a big career in the arts.
Even in his, you know, now coming to the 80s, if it was not for lockdown, last year would have been
another musical.
Amazing achievement.
Yeah.
And I still believe we will be able to celebrate, and hopefully we all can come and do it. But what was he about to do last year?
Well, let's just back up. I mean, my earliest memories of him are writing a review when he was a student close to where we lived in England and started the church in a place called Shrivenham, and he wrote a review called "Oh, What a Lovely Course," and that got great reviews, and then he went on and did a pantomime with Dick Whittington that sounds just sort of like just another run-out pantomime, but actually attracted a lot of attention. I remember we had the great honor of Princess Anne coming to watch it. Whoa, so the Princess Royal at the time, and so, you know, he was sort of attracting interest because I think of, as I say, because he was great at writing songs and words and so forth. And then he went on and did a whole series of Gilbert and Sullivan operas, which were terrific. And I'm just jumping ahead here, but right now he was about to put on a show. I think
he did the Helena.
Well, this is yes.
That's the pantomime.
Yeah, no, he was about to do a show called Streetwise, wasn't he?
Yeah.
No, Beauty is My Business.
Yeah, Beauty is My
Business. He did that show about Helena Rubinstein, the sort of creator of the modern, not fashion, but makeup and beauty world. And then more recently, he was about to show a show called Streetwise, I think it was called, but it's been delayed because of the pandemic.
Wait for it.
I encourage you to go and watch. Ticket sales. There's a link at the bottom of the show.
Yes, definitely. Well, we need to wrap up this program because we could spend here hours and hours, because it's an 80 years, did I say it right? Of history of life that we could bring so many memories, but obviously we need to try to resume it all here. And I want to say that you are indeed a champion. You are a history maker. You are an outstanding young man.
Yeah, and let me say as well, Dad, you know, obviously words aren't sufficient really at a time like this, even though we've spent a few minutes talking about you, to just say the depth of gratitude that I have for all your love, your investment, your care, your generosity to me, to Sylvia, to our children, and I know to my siblings and many others around you. You've really positively impacted so many lives. And I'm so glad that, you know, I've been nurtured in your house. And some of the things that I carry today, I mean, I'm a preacher, singing, dancing preacher myself, but I know where I get it from. At times, I wish I could get a bit more of what you have, your command of words, as I say, and the fact that you're able to give a speech without even a glance at your notes and things like that, absolutely extraordinary. So you're so talented. But most importantly, your character has been such a positive influence on my life. And so I want to say thank you, God bless you, and we love you so very, very much.
Indeed. And let's just mention the names of his grandchildren, because we couldn't just pass this moment without remembering that he, in 2002, 2 grandchildren. I think he used to say that having grandchildren, what is that?
Having grandchildren is rather like waiting for a London bus. You wait forever for one to arrive, and nothing comes for a long time, and then suddenly 3 come at once.
It's true.
So they started coming.
So in 2002, May 11th, they came Joel Brownstein. And then June the 12th, the same year, 2002, come Titus Timothy Bontempo Stevens. And then the following year, 2003, comes along Benjamin. And then comes Elsa.
Daniel.
Daniel. Oh, wait a minute. Elsa and Daniel. Daniel, Elsa, and then comes Charlie. Pedro and Charlie. They are both 2006. Zoe, and then Jemima Joy. Jemima is 12 now, so his youngest.
9 gifts.
18 is the 2-year-old ones, and 12 years old is the baby one. Is Jemima the youngest one? It was Zoe. No, it's Jemima. My goodness, yes. So time is flying by, but it's so wonderful, and I'm really looking forward for the day that the whole world can be free from whatever is going on right now. So nasty. So
and we can travel and give you a hug.
Yes, give you a hug and get all the grandchildren together. And I wish for all of you that are watching this moment of reflection on my father-in-law's life. And I know you probably identify with many things and made you to think as well of your life. And have hope that soon we'll be able to celebrate as well the people that mean to you. It's important for you in your life. Just think of your parents, and just give them a moment to remember their story. It's so good. I feel it so good. I could cry here. I tried to hold my tears because it was so touching to think of somebody who fought for life and arrived to 80. My goodness. Yeah. That's all there. Happy birthday, Dad.
Happy birthday,
Happy 80th.
Lots of love.
Love you.
Extraordinary is even more than anyone that you adore can love, is all that I can give to you. Love is more than just a game for two. Two in love can make it. Take my heart, but please don't break it. Land you. You got a friend in me. When the rollers rough ahead and you're miles and miles from your nice warm bed, you just remember what your old pal said. Boy, you got a friend in me. Yeah, you got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. You got troubles, I got them too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. We stick together, we see it through, 'cause you got a friend in me. Yeah, you got a friend in me. Some other folks might be.
Qualquer tarde que es de la